bonjour, ciao, and welcome back to my channel. Now, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Tolu and I am currently a second year medic at the University of Oxford. And I know it's been a while for those of you who've been like watching my channel for a while. It's been a while since I've actually put out, proper content. And that's because I just honestly needed a break from YouTube. It got to the point where I wasn't actually enjoying the stuff I was putting out. I just wasn't in a personal sort of good headspace, but I am now. As you can see, I'm in a new location. It's because I've moved back to uni. And hopefully I can just make content that I actually love again, and show you a bit more about what it's like to be a medic here at this university, and just show you a bit of fun and some insight into my life, I guess. Now, as you can see by the title of this video, it's going to be all about personal statements, and I'm going to actually be reading out my own because I felt like I just wanted to highlight some of the things that I did that I hope managed to help me get into this position. I don't know, but I will just read out my personal statement, and I guess you can basically analyze it yourself. I'll probably analyze it myself as well, and just use it to help edit your own personal statements or give you some inspiration as to what you could potentially feature as well, because medicine personal statements are quite particular, and there are certain things that you just kind of need to include, or should at least try to include, to basically highlight what you can bring to the table essentially. So I've got my personal statement here up on my iPad. I'm just going to read it out into chunks and break it down as I go along, just to highlight some of the things that I did and put in there, and things that you could potentially put as well. The deadline for personal statements, or just for applications in general for medicine, is October 15th. So make sure that you have all the things that you want to include by then. Or if you're just watching this later in the year, hopefully this gives you some ideas as to how you can potentially sort of start tailoring your own personal statement. But before I start reading mine out loud, I just want to put out a disclaimer saying that use this personal statement and the things I put in here at your own discretion, and be mindful of plagiarism, because if you were to copy any of the things that I put down in my personal statement, almost word for word or something, or just along the lines, you're the one who'll be in trouble, not me. And your application could potentially be jeopardized as well. So please, please, please do not plagiarize someone else's work, not mine, not anyone else's, because you will almost definitely get caught. So please make sure that whatever work you're inputting is your own, it's genuine, because otherwise your application to med school or wherever you want to apply to will be sort of jeopardized, and I don't want that to happen for you. So make sure that whatever you're putting out there is your own work, and yeah. Now, when it comes to a medicine personal statement, there are a couple of criteria that some tutors, depending on where you apply to, are looking for. They want to see your passion for the subject, and that's usually through you going above and beyond your school syllabus and outside of your school sort of work to show that you're actually interested in this subject, whether that be work experience or voluntary work or books, etc. And I know it's quite difficult now because we're in a pandemic, so maybe access to work experience and voluntary work may not have been as accessible as it would have done for previous years or maybe later years, but there are still so many options that you could potentially do to help with your application. And I've made a video on things that you can do if you don't have work experience or voluntary work because of the pandemic, and I will sort of put the link in at the top here somewhere, maybe. I don't even know if it's on that side or that side. It'll be on one side, but check that out if you haven't, if you still need a few more ideas on what things you can do. But let me stop blabbing, let me just stop chatting away, and let me actually, start reading out my personal statement. So I applied to the University of Oxford, St Andrews, Nottingham and Imperial, and I got offers from all 4 medical schools. So hopefully my personal statement helped, contribute to those things. So here goes. So I started off by saying, a good doctor is one that is active or proactive in promoting health. They save lives, alleviate pain and treat disease using higher thought. To me, their commitment to respecting others and providing support is unequivocal. This has given me the drive to pursue a medical degree. Now, introductions are all about sort of setting the scene for a personal statement, and I feel like with mine, I've made it clear that I want to talk about the qualities of a doctor, because I wanted to show to my tutors that I understood what a good doctor would entail, what characteristics they possess, and throughout my personal statement I wanted to basically show that I also possess those same qualities through the work experience I've done, through the books I've done, the research I've done, etc. Just to show that I'm actually proactive in wanting to pursue this degree. I'm proactive in wanting to help others, and so on. So my introduction was just essentially me sort of trying to basically start off by saying that I feel like I have all these things, so I'll just provide my evidence in my main bodies to just help support my case a bit more. So that's just my approach to my introduction. If you want to, you could start it off with sort of a rhetorical question and try and answer it throughout your personal statement. Talk about your own personal experiences, how maybe you have a particular sort of condition and you love the way that the doctors helped sort of treat you, or maybe you just hated how they treated you and you wanted to sort of be the change as a result. So there are many ways to go about setting an introduction, but what I would advise is write your introduction last. Try and set out the overall theme for your personal statement from the main bodies first, and then maybe write your introduction and your conclusion at the end after you've written down your main body, so you have like a general idea of what things you want to include or what things you want to sort of feature in that thing as well. So my introduction I wrote last because I just had no clue how to even start it off, but once I had finished the rest of my main body, I then went to do my intro, because then I had sort of an understanding of what I was actually trying to aim for with the rest of that stuff. So hopefully that helps. Next we have my first main body paragraph. So I said, through work experience with a professor of developmental neurobiology and of experimental psychology in Oxford, I explored developments in the mapping of brain functionality. There I observed stages of cerebral cortical development and learnt how brain cells form their connections and move to their final location. The work was centred on cells, not people. However, gaining insight from this new perspective showed me a relationship between neuron development and potential diseases of the brain. New treatments can only emerge from a deeper understanding of brain circuits. I was intrigued by how clinical therapies could be derived from these findings. Oliver Sacks's A Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat introduced limitations to studies in medicine, in the sense that some patients are treated as just cases, rather than just individuals. It provided insight into the need for sensitivity, because one would only expect the humanity of care. Now, this paragraph is all about my love and my interest for the brain. But yeah, quick apologies for like the lighting if it keeps switching up. I have no control over the sun, unfortunately, so be mindful of that, and I apologise. But anyway, going back to my personal statement, this paragraph was basically all about my love for neuro and the brain, and I managed to somehow pursue work experience in one of the labs in Oxford, and I managed to do some lab work with brains, and I am very blessed and very fortunate to have been in that position. I know it's not necessarily as accessible to like others to gain, but I'm very much pleased with sort of managing to actually pursue that. And if there's anyone who's interested or willing or wanting to sort of do sort of work experience, I would just say email everyone and anyone and just hope that someone will respond. Because the only reason why I got that sort of work experience is because I emailed someone at random, not really thinking they would reply, and then they actually did. So just email everyone and anyone and just hope for the best. And yeah, so I wanted to dedicate this paragraph to my interest for neuro, and hopefully you can tell that I've done many things to help sort of emphasize my love for neuro. Right now I want to specialise in neuro, but we'll see what happens in a few years time, because second year content's all about neuro, so who knows, I may end up hating it. But at this current moment in time, I'm very interested in potentially specialising in something to do with the brain. So I started off by talking about my work experience and the things that I had learned. Your work experience should, not your work experience, your personal statement should be a reflection of the things that you've learned and gained from whatever things that you've done for your application. Talk more about what you've learnt and your reflection of your experiences rather than name dropping the things that you've done, because at the end of the day, tutors and people who sort of look at applications, they're aware that there is a disparity in access between gaining work experience and other things. People have doctors as parents, as family, friends. Not everyone does, so people know that there are going to be sort of difficulties in gaining sort of work experience or voluntary work, especially now in a pandemic. So tutors are more than understanding about how there is a disparity and there's like an unfair advantage that some people may have when it comes to this work experience. So if you don't have like the most amazing thing ever, it's okay. Just talk about what you've learned, because again, it's about what you've gained from your experience rather than the things that you've done. So I am kind of like irritated with myself for sort of name dropping the Oxford sort of title. There was no need for me to do that. I just felt like it would help me in terms of clout. It won't necessarily do that, because tutors at the end of the day don't really care about where you're doing your work experience as long as you've like learned something from it and gained something from it. So I didn't need to name drop where I did my work experience. If you want to do so, go ahead, but like it's not compulsory for you to do so. You can literally just go and say, oh, your local hospital, if that's necessary. You don't have to sort of specify the name if you don't want to, and that's absolutely fine. I started discussing what I had actually done in my work experience and what I had learned. So I did a lot about, rather than sort of the whole overall people understanding, I spoke a bit more about how sort of diseases may arise from like a cellular level or a molecular level, because that's very much interesting too, and a lot of medicine courses will teach you more about the scientific sort of molecular level before they introduce it to you on a like whole big human level. I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but hopefully you get what I mean. So I wanted to talk about things on a cellular level first and sort of build up on it after, because it's just as important understanding how disease may arise from the cellular level as it is when it comes to their presentation on the skin, perhaps. I don't know what I'm trying to gain out, but that's what I did. And then just to show my interest for the brain even further, I read a book that centered around the brain and neurological diseases. However, the book I read is one of the most bait books that you may ever come across when it comes to applying for medicine. The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat is one of the most cliched books you could ever read, alongside The Selfish Gene. The Selfish Gene's like at the top, but The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat is one of the most bait, like overused books ever. And I knew that when I put it in my personal statement. However, I felt like because I had done work experience in regards to the brain and had already proven my passion by doing that work experience, I could potentially feature it in because it would link and flow together. So if you're in a position where you have read like a really common book, it's okay. Just one, make sure you understand what the book means, and two, it links in with your personal statement. Don't just randomly name drop it because it won't necessarily help you. But definitely make sure that you understand it and that it flows in with what you've written, because if you were to get through to the interview stage, chances are that you could potentially be asked about that book. I remember at both of my interviews, I was asked about The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, so it's important to make sure that if you are to put something in your personal statement, you mean it, you've done it, so that if you were to be questioned on it, you know exactly how to sort of talk about it after. But that was just that paragraph. So hopefully some of the things I've said are helpful, but let's go on to the next one. So the next one says, delivering care was a goal reflected throughout all of my placements. From witnessing the recovery of children at an orphanage in India to connecting with infirm guests on a respite care holiday in the UK, I was able to watch patients' best interests be placed first. Following this, I sought to regularly visit a woman to improve her own quality of life. She is a stroke survivor with right-sided hemiparesis and aphasia, an indication of cognitive impact. Yet, just through talking to her, I was able to play a part in her journey to recovery. This is something I am keen to continue to do for others as a doctor. I went on to research the usefulness of neurofeedback as a form of rehabilitation for stroke. Having learnt that aberrant brain activity can be repaired because of neuroplasticity, I think if used in conjunction with therapy and developed, it could serve as an effective form of treatment. This section was just dedicated to the well-being of patients, because alongside, you know, treating disease using sort of scientific understanding, there's also the side where you need to make sure that the well-being and the happiness of your patients are kind of ensured, not necessarily ensured, but just supported in whatever way possible, because it's just as important. So I dedicated this paragraph to this, talking about all of my experiences where instead of like treating people with first aid or something, I just literally sat down with them and made sure that they were okay, because that's just as important. So I went on a school trip and I spoke about parts of that school trip. That was my India section. Even if it's like just like little sections of things that you've done, it's worth mentioning them, because my trip to India wasn't necessarily dedicated to just volunteering work. It was a part of sort of a school conference, and we've got the opportunity to sort of visit an orphanage after. So if there's like any sort of small phases of a trip that you've done or something that you've just done in your life, you can potentially mention and feature it in, because it's justified and it's important too. It doesn't have to be like specifically catered towards work experience, because there are many aspects of people's lives that could potentially sort of be linked to medicine and well-being. So just think deeply about things that you could potentially feature if you haven't done so already, and go about it from there. I spoke about my work, not my work experience, about my voluntary work with this lady who was a stroke survivor. And sometimes rehabilitation is a necessary sort of form of treatment when it comes to particular conditions. So talking about that was necessary, and I felt like I needed to do that in this paragraph. And then again, the idea of linking things together, I did a bit of research about the treatments of strokes, and I included this in that paragraph as well, just to help it flow. So many ways to approach that kind of sort of style, but that's just how I wanted to do it. And yeah, just doing that bit of research. And it was interesting because my tutor now, he specializes in neuro, and he, in my interview, questioned me about like this section of my work experience and also the previous one. So it was interesting to just basically see that, because who knows who you'll come across in the future. So just be mindful of whatever you put in your personal statement, make sure you understand it well in case you're interviewed on it. But yeah, anyway, next paragraph. While observing a coronary angiogram at my local hospital, the value of teamwork was underlined. A patient with complaints of prolonged chest pain had been admitted, and I watched as the doctors searched for potential narrowed arteries. Alongside him was a radiographer supplying the contrast dye and a nurse interpreting the patient's vitals. A shared intent to promote the well-being of the patient through the treatment was evident. Now, this paragraph I felt was short and sweet, because I just literally spoke about the qualities, or some specific qualities, that good doctors or just good healthcare professionals in general should have, and that's the idea of teamwork. If you're stuck on the qualities that you feel like you should have as a doctor, look at the GMC, so the General Medical Council's guidelines online, because they sort of explicitly state what qualities they want their doctors or their healthcare professionals to possess. One being able to work in a team, having good communication skills, leadership skills, etc. So what you can do is just literally look for some sort of keywords and terminology that they use, and sort of maybe name drop them in your personal statement, and then use evidence with things that you've done to help support that sort of understanding. So the idea of teamwork, really important within medicine. So I, through observing it, got an understanding of why it's so important, because essentially you've got someone's life in your hands. It's important to be able to work in a team so you can continue to promote their well-being and their sort of happiness and their health. So if there are any sort of key qualities that you see on that GMC guidelines, or that you're just aware of in general, maybe try and include it and just show evidence of how either you've seen it or you've possessed it yourself, because then it'll just only help your personal statement and that bit much further. My last main body paragraph before my conclusion is about my extracurriculars and the things I did sort of outside of school, kind of. Depending on where you apply to will show you how you distribute how much you write about your extracurriculars and your work experience / voluntary work. Oxford and Cambridge and other universities like to refer to these as supercurriculars, because they're in line with your subject but they're still above your school curriculum. So with medicine it's kind of straightforward, just your reading, your work experience, your voluntary work, they all kind of count as supercurriculars. So you're meant to have an 80-20 ratio, so 80% supercurriculars, 20% extracurriculars, just so you can sort of emphasize your point as much as you can. Now in terms of the extracurriculars, there's always a way to sort of relate them back to medicine anyway, and that's in reference to soft skills. If you were to have played for a sports society, you can talk about your organisation skills and your time management, because you were able to balance those sports with your schoolwork. Whether it be a part-time job, you can say the same thing, taught you good time management skills and organisation skills, and also it maybe helped with your communication. Maybe you were on tills and you had to sort of interact with customers all the time. So there's always a way for you to sort of potentially sort of switch the things that you've done to help it sort of tailor your medicine personal statement even further. So hopefully that helps. But in regards to my extracurricular paragraph, it wasn't really extracurricular-y because I still continue to talk about supercurriculars, but it was the best position for me to be able to put this down. So it says, 4 years of St John Ambulance has allowed for many opportunities to understand and work with people from a wide social spectrum. Combined with an initial interest in anatomy and physiology, I realised the importance of applied skills within healthcare. This led me to pick up the title of Regional Cadet of the Year for London and South 2018, a role that I am proud allows me to act as an ambassador for the organisation and its youth. A month-long expedition to Costa Rica also let me explore a new part of the world, exposing me to new social, cultural and ethical views. I wanted to find a way to broaden my horizons, and this student-led trip let me do so. Determination and organisation proved the essential if my team wanted to survive it. Now, I kind of felt bad if I were to include any part-time jobs or things I wanted to include, because I felt like I wanted to use as much of my personal statement as possible to talk about medicine. But if you want to talk about your part-time jobs and your sports, you definitely can do so. I just personally felt like I wanted to spend more of my sort of 4,000 characters to talk about medicine-y things. So the first part is about my time with St John Ambulance, and those of you who sort of have known me since school, I've been doing, I did St John Ambulance for ages. It took up a lot of my time, and I managed to do some really great things within the organisation as well. So I did a competition and I managed to win the title of Regional Cadet of the Year for that year. Allowed me to go to a bunch of high-profile events, and just literally be the ambassador for the youth of my region. So that's the southeast of England and London, kind of. So I felt like it was necessary to basically feature it, because it was a role that I was really proud of. And it definitely highlighted sort of my passion for medicine, because the skills I learned in terms of first aid were necessary. I managed to do sort of like a lot of sort of events practicing my first aid, competitions I entered, all the stuff I did, the courses I taught and even learned from, etc. was necessary. And it also exposed me to sort of many different social groups. So when it came to kids, to the elderly, and those who were less able, etc., like I managed to sort of have conversations with, treat and do a lot with people from a wide social spectrum, which is what I'll end up potentially doing as a doctor as well. So I thought it'd be necessary to sort of basically highlight this idea and this attribute to help with my personal statement a little bit further. I then wanted to talk about my World Challenge expedition with school to Costa Rica. So again, me being exposed to sort of a new social group, new social spectrum, because I went to travel to a completely different part of the country, embracing South American culture, the views, the values, all the things there was just so enriching. And again, it's necessary because as a doctor, you're going to come across a wide range of patients from all sorts of backgrounds. So it's important to be able to sort of appreciate and understand the different sort of perspectives and views. And I wanted to highlight that again in my personal statement, even if it was just through 2 sentences. And I ended up by talking about determination and organisation, which again are important sort of qualities that a doctor should possess. So like I said at the introduction, I wanted to talk about the qualities of a good doctor, and I used my personal statement to basically prove that I did possess those same qualities, and I've done the things to help indicate that I have those qualities too, if that makes sense. And then I ended up finishing my personal statement with this conclusion. So I said, the human body is one that deserves great appreciation of its emotional and physical demands, something I believe I can give. Through studying medicine, I can continue to be challenged intellectually and become equipped with the skills needed to maintain appropriate levels of health. Quick little summary of my views of that personal statement, showing what I felt like I could bring to the table, what I still feel like a good doctor should be able to do, so that's being able to appreciate the emotional and physical demands of the human body, and so on, and just showing that I was very much ready and eager to sort of take on that journey myself. So that was my personal statement. Hopefully it's given you some ideas of things that you potentially feature in yours. As I said before, don't plagiarize it, please don't, because you'll be in trouble. Not me, because I've already set my personal statement through, it's in their system, so at your own risk. But hopefully just from me reading that, you've gained a bit of insight into things that you could potentially feature in yourself. And yeah, that was my personal statement, part of the application that helped me get 4 offers. So hopefully it helps with your own application too. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below, or send me a message on my socials. I'll leave them somewhere, who knows. And yeah, stay tuned for any more videos from me, because I'm in a good space now and I feel like more ready to make content. So yeah, good luck with your applications, good luck with your sort of journey into medicine if you're wanting to pursue medicine. And yeah, I shall see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.